Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. Today I'm finally going to be sharing the last installment in this what I could call a relaxed homeschooling series, just basically sharing with you how I cover each required subject in our homeschool. And today's topic is going to be science. And you know what? History and science are my two favorite subjects to approach with my kids in this manner, so I really hope that you enjoy this video. You know, I have to say that it's a bit ironic to me that the two subjects, science and history, that I consider the easiest and the most fun to approach in a relaxed homeschooling manner, are the very two subjects that a lot of people really feel bound to using textbooks for. And today my focus is on science, since I already talked about social studies and history and all of those subtopics last week. But I'm going to tell you the same thing that I told you with social studies, is that I do not use any textbooks at all for science. None. Nothing, not a zip, zilch, none. So I'm going to talk to you today, though, about the different ways that we do cover science in our homeschool, because, you know, the fact is that the same as with history, I found that science textbooks tend to make the subjects very, very boring. Everything is condensed into really small portions. Kids are only getting like snippets of information. They're not really learning anything in depth. And you know, that can be okay if you want to get like a broad range of a specific subject area. But if you have kids who are intensely interested in certain things that you know those books are going to be covering, it can be hard, you know, if you have to tell your kids, I know that you were looking forward to learning about amphibians, but it only took us 2 days. We're already finished with it. Now we've got to move on to something else. And you know, although there are ways that you can supplement it, what I have found is that there are far better ways to approach science, at least with my kids in my house. So one of the very first ways that we approach science is with our unit studies. We are a unit study family. I have 8 kids left homeschooling out of my 11 kids, and so unit studies have become a lifesaver for me. If you don't know what unit studies are, I have lots of videos about unit studies. I'll link a few of them in the description box. But in short, unit studies are multi-level, meaning that they can be used with a variety of age ranges, and they are cross-curricular, meaning that they cover all subject areas. So they take away the necessity of having to separate all of your subjects throughout the day. Now, yeah, I have been separating the subjects for these videos just to show you how I do them. But when we do our homeschool day, we don't have, like, say, a language arts time or a math time or a science time or a social studies time. Everything kind of like meshes together, because that's how learning is. That's how life is. Life isn't broken up into subjects. So I don't really think that it's necessary to break your child's homeschooling up that way. But I also know that a lot of states require that you cover science. And, you know, I know that a lot of you are curious about how we do it, but yes, unit studies are one of those ways that we cover science. I have my daughter's binder here, and I just wanted to give you some ideas. So for example, my kids and I just finished an Explorers Navigation, Stars, and Sailing unit study. So in that unit study, we learned a lot about navigation, and we watched a lot of videos about different ways that different cultures were able to navigate the seas. And because of that, we started learning about the constellations and the stars, because that is how a lot of explorers, like the Vikings, like Columbus, that's how they navigated. So one of the things that we learned about, she just did a note. I told her to pick out a few constellations and draw them there. But yeah, you know, so what I did was I went to the library and I got some books out on the stars and constellations. We found a great book. I think it's just called Constellations by, I think it was H.A. Ray. I'm not sure, but I'll check, and I'll link it in the description box if you want to check it out. But that was a fabulous book for learning about the stars. It was very interesting, and that is actually a book that I did read a little bit to my kids every day. And you know, that's one thing I mentioned with the history video, how we use our read alouds very often to approach that subject, and we can do the same thing with science too. However, I have to say that it is really hard to find an actual read aloud that is mainly science related. So most of the books that we use in our homeschool are trade books, you know, just books like this, nonfiction books, which, yeah, you could definitely use these as read alouds, but my kids, they're more into fiction. So most of our read alouds do tend to lean more towards history, although they all do include some science. Like, for example, Carry On, Mr. Bowditch had a lot of navigation in there, and it had talked a lot about the stars in there. So there is a lot of crossover, but we do use a lot of trade books like this. So as you can see, this one also includes experiments that we will be doing. We just started a detective unit study, which is why I have one on fingerprints. So just to show you here that there are experiments in here. This one we're not particularly using now, but I just wanted to show you that, you know, you can read these to your kids just a little bit each day. That's what I do sometimes. Very often I will do our normal read aloud, and then I might have the kids do an activity, maybe where they're writing or doing some kind of hands-on activity, and then I'll have them sit back down and I'll just read for a couple more minutes out of one of these nonfiction books. And I want to say that I don't ever go overboard with reading the nonfiction books, because again, it really isn't my kids' style. So once I see that they're not really paying as much attention anymore, that's when I kind of tend to say, okay, let's finish this for today and let's just read more of it tomorrow. So really just a few pages out of these books that I read with my kids each day. So another thing that they did in our unit study was, while we were reading Carry On, Mr. Bowditch, and also it was in the Explorers, Navigation, Stars, and Sailing unit, we started talking about spices and where spices come from, what spices can be used for, how they're ground up and, you know, sent to wherever they're going. So, you know, a lot of times the things that you think of as being science are just the things that you would find in a textbook, but we found a lot of really interesting things in the unit study that a lot of textbooks don't cover, like, for example, navigation, like the spices. My kids also learned about different types of ships, and we were talking about how the sails actually, like, how they can move faster or slower depending on what sort of sail they have. I'm trying to find, she did do another one. Oh, here we go. So, you know, the sails are how they, you know, go faster, slower, how well they can get through the waters. So they learned all of that as well with our unit study. So that's one great thing about unit studies, is that you take one topic, and no matter what that topic is, you are bound to touch on every single subject, no matter what you are learning about. So now I did talk to you about how we use, you know, a lot of trade books in our homeschool also. And another thing that we do is videos. My kids love to watch science related videos, whether it's things about animals, usually about animals. It could be documentaries about animals. It could be watching YouTube videos of Brave Wilderness, where he's, you know, like getting stung by bees and all that kind of good stuff. My kids love to watch The Magic School Bus, so that's a lot of fun too. I still enjoy watching The Magic School Bus with them. So that's another great way to integrate science into your homeschool without having to bore yourself to death with textbooks. So, and you know, the good thing about Magic School Bus is that there are so many episodes that you are bound to find one that will cover at least something close to what you're learning about. So I really urge you to keep that in mind as you are, you know, doing things with your kids. It's something different. It's a nice break, but at the same time, they're learning lots from it. And a lot of times it presents things in a way that you would never have thought about. So the last way that I actually want to talk about, oh, you know what? I didn't mention this. Well, I did a little bit. Hands-on activities are something that we really do a lot of in, you know, in our homeschool as well. And that often is included in with the unit study. You know, we do a lot of hands-on activities, a lot of, like, we did a lot of gardening last year. The kids learned a lot about plants. I'm having a really difficult time talking today. And you know, that's the thing. My kids like to keep their hands moving. They like to keep busy. Hands-on activities are a great way for you to integrate science. We even have, I should have pulled it out, but I didn't. We have a book that shows you different science experiments that you can do different activities just by using materials that you have from around your house. So these are all fun ways for you to keep your kids engaged, to keep them learning, and to keep them from not getting bored. Now I'm going to move on to the last way that we actually approach science, because I saved this for last because this is really the biggest way that we approach science in our homeschool. And you know, it's really just because this is how my kids are. But the biggest way that we approach science is through nature study. My kids absolutely love everything there is about the outdoors. I mean, even when we were living in the city, you would think that living in the city would make it hard to do nature study. No, they found a way. They would like walk to a nearby creek all the time, and they were there constantly, or even still just digging in our own backyard for bugs and all of those creepy crawlies that I hate. So if you have kids like that, nature study is perfect for them. Not to mention the fact that, you know, just breathing the fresh air and being surrounded by greenery. Actually, being surrounded by greenery, studies have shown that it actually does help children academically. It helps children mentally, just by having that greenery all around them. So definitely you want to take advantage of the outdoors in all kinds of weather. Now, okay, I probably wouldn't take my kids out like if it was downpouring or something like that, but you know, I will take my kids out when it's a little chilly out, when it's colder out. My other no that I won't do, if it's like 100 degrees out, no, I typically won't take my kids out on those days. If they want to go out in our yard, they're welcome to. But you know, you have to really be aware of your surroundings, be aware of your community and the sorts of things that you can find to do there. Whether it is, you know, it couldn't even be, it doesn't have to be nature study. It could be like different museums that you have around, or it could be science centers that you might have in your city. But again, yeah, I'm going to fall back to that good old nature study, because nature is free, at least if you're doing it like in an area that you don't have to pay to get into. Nature is free. And you know, it is something that you don't really need to bog down with textbooks, because you just can't beat seeing things in everyday life. So you know, that is one great thing. Look up the sorts of animals that are in your state or even in your locality, exactly where you're at, and keep an eye out for them. You know, my kids have loved living in this new town that we're in, because they have seen vultures, and they have seen, they caught a garter snake in the backyard, and toads, and we had katydids in our kitchen not too long ago. We had never seen them before. I didn't even know what they were at first. Different kinds of slugs, lots of salamanders, and you know, so let your kids get their hands dirty, because you have to remember that a dirty kid is a happy kid. And you know what? I know that nature studies will very often intimidate a lot of people, because especially if you're reading of Charlotte Mason style nature studies, because I used to read about nature studies that way. And when I did, it kind of made me not want to do it, not because it wasn't like a good way to do nature study, but because she would often talk about having the kids take journals along and having them sit down and sketch something that they see outside using lots of detail. And you know, in theory, that sounds like a beautiful way to learn. In reality, my kids like to run. When they're outdoors, I'm not going to get them to sit and draw. They want to run, they want to explore, and that's what I'm going to let them do. Now, I do have a couple good books that you could actually use to help you to come up with some nature study ideas. I have used the Book of Gardening Projects for Kids. This one, Handbook of Nature Study, is chock full of information about nature study. I wouldn't try to use it like a textbook because you would get completely overwhelmed, but you could definitely use it as a reference point. But anyway, I am going to close my video today with a short clip, only about 1 minute long, of my kids doing nature study at a canal by our house, just so that you can get an idea of what nature study in a relaxed homeschool looks like. One thing that I really want you to remember is that nature study does not have to be fancy. You don't have to have all sorts of intricate plans written down for you to do while you're taking your kids outside. You know, God's creation is plenty. You don't have to worry about trying to make it better or trying to enhance it in any way. If you've got kids who like to be outside, if you've got kids who are curious and who like to just find new things, who love animals, who love plant life, you can't go wrong with just letting your kids sit outside for a while, take them for walks, take them to parks. They are bound to learn so much more in these places than they would ever learn from a textbook. Anyway, that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one over on Instagram because YouTube always deletes my comments. And I hope you have a great day.